The Local Government and Municipal Finance Committee will come to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Chair Fitzgerald.
Here.
Representatives Burns, Shannon.
Present.
Breen.
Present.
Rogers.
Here.
Hill.
Here.
Hoskins.
Here.
Pies.
Present.
Zorn.
Yep.
Paquette.
Here.
Bizat.
Present.
Bagol.
Here.
Preston.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I need a motion to approve and adopt the minutes from our previous meeting on February 7th. That motion is made by Representative Pies. And seeing no objection, the meeting minutes from our previous meeting will stand approved. Today, I am proposing an additional committee rule regarding testimony to clarify our procedures. You all have a copy at your seats here. I need a motion to adopt the new committee rules. That motion is made by Representative Breen. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Chair Fitzgerald.
Yes.
Representative Burns, Shannon.
Yes.
Breen.
Aye.
Rogers.
Yes.
Hill.
Yes.
Hoskins.
Yes.
Pies.
Yes.
Zorn.
Yes.
Paquette. Bizat.
Yes.
Bagol.
Yes.
Preston.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 11 nays, 0 nays, 0 passes. The committee rules are updated and approved.
The committee rules are updated and approved. Thank you, Madam Clerk. With that, today we are just bringing up House Bill 5203, a Representative Breen bill to define the powers and duties of county boards and commissioners of the several counties regarding sheriff's offices, and today we'll be allowing Breen to come forward with a number of persons here to speak in regards to this bill. So Representative Breen, I'll have you come forward here, and I believe that you're going to be joined by Matt Saxton, Executive Director of the Michigan Sheriff's Association. So Mr. Saxton, thank you very much for being here today. You may begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to try not to talk too much and leave it to one of the experts here. In a nutshell, we know that there is a shortage of law enforcement officers that is plaguing the state. There's a lot of shortages in a lot of positions. It's particularly troublesome when it comes to public safety. And so we need to find unique ways to either entice people to enter the field, to remain in the field, or to bring people who have left the field back. And we have this very weird thing in this state where in certain counties, just some counties, retired county deputies, they can't come back from retirement to work in the same county that they left. So what goes with them? A lot of institutional knowledge. So there are certain counties that have MERS plans through the state, and there's some that have independent boards. This particular bill pertains only to the counties that have independent retirement boards. It will allow them to have flexibility to bring back deputies and sheriffs that previously worked for them without a cap. So hopefully that encapsulates the bare bones of it. I will be happy to answer any questions, but I would think it'd be most helpful to have Mr. Saxton here testify to give additional information first.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Fitzgerald, committee members. Thank you for your time here today and considering this House Bill 5203, which has broad bipartisan support. And we're thankful for Representative Breen for bringing this issue forward. She mentioned she was going to be short, but she covered just about everything in the bill and the concerns that we have. She did mention it only affects a few counties, and those counties are Bay, Berrien, Genesee, Gogebic, Jackson, Kent, Macomb, Midland, Monroe, Oakland, St. Clair, Washtenaw, and Wayne. As you listen to those counties going through, that's 5 of the largest counties in the state of Michigan. But also Gogebic County is in there, which is one of our smallest populated counties. So it affects everybody across the state. 4 of the major points that we would like to see this bill go through, many counties can already do this. if they have a MERS plan. So it puts the other counties on a level playing field. And then this is good for the deputies as well as the sheriffs. It enables sheriffs to bring back retired personnel that have a vast knowledge of the agency, the community they serve, and the operations within that agency. So it opens the door to bring back qualified personnel that we know can hit the ground running and provide for the safety and security of the communities they serve. And lastly, it provides for a tool to offset the negative effects that we've seen in attrition over the last 4 years in Michigan. We're still working hard. We see that number going in the right direction of new men and women entering the profession, but we need to continue that, and this would be a way for the sheriffs to not have that negative impact when we are seeing so many law enforcement and jail personnel retiring at their earliest retirement date. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much. I am going to ask one question here before we have a few others from the committee, and I know that we have others who are here to testify as well, some virtually. One thing I wanted to clarify was, you recognized that there are a number of counties that this will impact, but there are others that are already more or less taking advantage of this type of return to work, if you will. So this is bringing those counties that you listed, they're up to the standard that those other counties are operating? Is that the way?
It would bring those counties that were listed, they're the only counties that currently have a plan that is covered under MCL 4612A,
Okay.
which that whole section could use some work on if anybody wants to look at working on that entire section. We added a section E in 4612A that would allow sheriff's personnel to retire and come back and work full-time for that same sheriff's office grant, given that there is a bona fide separation of employment.
Okay, thank you. Representative Bazat.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Rep. Breen, thanks for bringing this forward. Obviously, the sheriff's very interested in this bill, very supportive. Our chair asked part of my question, so I'll go to the second part of my question. But how come I got a text from Sheriff Murphy, Livingston County, asking to support, and he designated the counties that are going to benefit. Why isn't MERS included in this, or do we need to do some more work to get that included? People that are under MERS?
I believe MERS has waived the requirement. This would just put them on par with them, if I recall right.
That is correct. MERS at this time does not have a 1,000-hour rule requirement within their plans. They are governed under a separate state statute, not this 4612A.
Thank you. Representative Pies.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm really concerned about the unfunded liabilities. And it says here regarding the fiscal impact that it could be made up with increased costs on payroll. So one, I'm wondering what those increased costs would be. And two, in the city I live in, we haven't been able to do anything to offset those liabilities. So that's what I'm concerned about.
I'll let Sheriff Saxton jump in after I say this, though. This is just applying to the county deputies. This isn't applying, so there's that. But this is a choice that I think counties are going to have to make, and it would be on the counties to make that decision. So if they choose to enter, they choose to do this because they realize that essentially somebody's going to be collecting their pension and working. Is that something that they want to take on as far as costs in order to help offset the loss of law enforcement personnel that they've been facing? It's a choice that I think that they should be making and not us.
I understood that was the county. I was just giving the locality as an example of me knowing that we're not able to make those costs. So perhaps you could explain then on borne by the county through increased costs and payroll. What would that be exactly?
So I guess the short answer to your question is the county would have to decide whether their finances allow them to be able to take advantage. This doesn't mandate that counties have to do it. It allows counties to do it if it benefits the county in question. So counties will have to decide if financially, if this is a positive for them or a negative. But we're governed best at the local level, and this allows each county to decide on their own whether they'll
Right. So
participate
maybe
in this or not.
maybe I'm having the problem in not understanding what increased costs on payroll. What increased costs? What would show up on a payroll?
Because they'd be hiring another person.
Well, not because I guess I'm like at your grocery list. You have peanut butter on it. Oh, that's on your grocery list. I'm wondering like what would show up on a payroll then. Is there anything specific costs that would be increased?
It'd be the cost of hiring another deputy.
Yeah, I think that we can connect
Yeah,
connect later on this and kind of shore up the understanding here. But right, I mean, if we're seeing a decrease in opportunities for attractiveness into the profession, right, and we're struggling to hire those 4 deputies, to bring back another deputy, we're still having an increased cost because there is additional payroll now for those deputies to join the force. And so I think there's a relative understanding there. We'll make sure that that's clarified, Representative Pies. And I think that you're right, that this allowing county boards to understand what financial impact this might have on their own counties, but enabling them to make that decision, because Michigan being a large state with many counties that have different financial circumstances and also population circumstances and requirements upon sheriff's departments, that is also, I think, what is at the kind of root of this issue, is that not a one-size-fits-all approach is what's best for our sheriff's departments across the state. Representative Zorn.
Thank you, and thank you for bringing the bill before us. It's an important bill. As we're all trying to find staffing for our government staffing and businesses. But I have a couple questions. First, this would include all employees of the sheriff's office, including office personnel, office staffing, sheriff deputies, building. In other words, anyone that works within the department would be covered.
That is correct, Representative Zorn.
Okay. When the person is brought back, would they be brought back at their same pay level, or would that be renegotiated? Or
Nothing in this bill pertains to how that individual will be reemployed.
okay,
The local community, the local sheriff's office, and county board would have to decide how they're going to put this new legislation enacted in their communities. And again, it's 11 counties that will be brought up on par as the other, do my math right, 72 counties with MERS retirement plans or other retirement plans. It doesn't mandate any payroll when an employee returns back to work.
and then when a employee retires, is there any wait time between the time that they retire and can come back?
For a county to rehire an employee, they would have to have a bona fide separation. Currently under MERS, I believe that's 60 days. But that employee has to retire with the knowledge that they're retiring and leaving the sheriff's office. But it allows the sheriff's office 60 days down the road, 90 days down the road, when they haven't filled that empty spot, to maybe recontact that retired employee and say, hey, we still got a spot here. Are you interested in coming back? So it puts it at the county level. It lets county boards, sheriff's offices decide who's coming to work for them.
If I could follow up, Chairman. when a police officer retires, it's very limited how long they can stay retired before they lose their certification. I think it's a year if I remember right, but whatever the number, 2 years? Okay. Is there any limitation to how long before any employee would lose that opportunity? I mean, could they wait for 3 years and come back?
There's nothing in the statute that would prohibit somebody coming back 10 years down the road. So they would have to still meet the MCO's licensing or local corrections officer unless they're coming back as a civilian employee, which oftentimes is the case where they come back as a civilian employee to fill an evidence or property room position. But then they're limited currently to only 1,000 hours a year, and that just handcuffs the sheriff's office in the county.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
If I may, Mr. Chair, I think the important thing to look at here is that this is a tool for the counties that gives them flexibility to decide what positions they need filled and under what circumstances. They could bring back somebody part-time, they could bring back somebody full-time, they could bring them back to the same position, they could bring them back, as he just mentioned, to a civilian position. So every county is going to be different. Some counties need more officers out on snowmobile trails. Some of them need them in the evidence room. Somebody might need them to help even just to sit in the office and greet people. Regardless, without this, if they try to bring somebody back, they can't unless they lift that cap, and you lose that institutional knowledge. So when you think of these smaller counties, they know each other. And I'm in Oakland County, so there's a lot, and I have a lot of respect for the way that our sheriff's department is run in many different ways. But I leave it up to the sheriff's department to determine what is best for the sheriff's department as far as personnel and hiring and what duties they want to give to these individuals. And I think that with this bill, that will give them the flexibility to help fill some of those gaps so that we can have the right number of people out on the road or in the evidence room or in the courtroom as bailiffs, whatever it takes.
It's a good word, flexibility. With that, we're going to take one final question for the two of you before we move on to one other who is looking to testify. So Representative Preston, you have our final question in this segment.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for bringing the bill. I think it's a great bill. Is it safe to say that the flexibility that this is going to provide is going to help mitigate things like forced overtime, work-life balance, and other pressures that are put on the department regarding losing staff just due to the pressures of trying to fill the gaps that are in there, and that this could potentially be financially either beneficial to the department or an even balance when you factor in the amount of overtime that you might be able to offset with this?
I'll leave this to my partner in stopping crime, I guess.
That's a great question, Representative Preston. Just Wayne County alone, last I knew, they had over 350 empty positions. They currently bring back retired personnel, but they can only work 1,000 hours. So in Wayne County, if they're able to bring individuals back who can work the 2,000 plus hours a year, that's saving right there 1,200 hours of overtime, or in most cases 1,200 hours of forced overtime on those individuals that are bearing the burden of the short-staffed. And it's not just Wayne County, it's across the board. And you may hear that from Sheriff LaJoy Young in her testimony.
Yeah, we'll be bringing her up here momentarily, but I think that point being made about responsibility in regular time versus overtime and the stress that it is putting on officers, both on the clock, if you will, and also outside of work as well. I think we can all, in some ways more than others, relate to that. So with that, I would like to bring, she is virtual, but Sheriff Michelle LaJoy Young, from my home county of Kent County, to provide testimony here. And you've heard some of the conversation in the room today, so please, when you're ready, you may begin with your testimony.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. I'm hoping you guys can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you just fine.
Okay, great. Yes, I have listened to the entire conversation that's been brought up to this point, and I would agree with everything that's been said. I do want to highlight a couple calls to action, if you will. Many of our academies across the state have stepped up and added sessions so that we could actually train more law enforcement officers. But even with all of those efforts, without significant migration into the state, we're going to be several years from now before we'll be able to reasonably staff the positions that are available right now today. And I would just point out, like in Kent County, we're the fastest growing county by number of people every single year. And so not only am I faced with trying to retain and encourage young people to join the field, I have to add positions in the face of all this, and it is a mountain to climb. And then once you do, I've had the privilege of being able to hire and train 95 officers in the last 2 years for my 110 person road patrol, to just kind of put that in perspective. And I guess just the capacity of an agency to bring on brand new people and prepare them for duty. It takes a lot of experienced personnel to be able to do that well. So this would give departments the opportunity to get that experienced personnel to pair up with the new personnel and get them ready for service and to perform in the way that we all expect them to perform daily. I also do want to emphasize, often I would use them for FTOs, but often we experience retiree rehires coming back to the court positions, to property room. Sometimes there's crossover and they might want to be employed in the jail after they've been on law enforcement or vice versa. We do obviously have the requirement to make sure they're qualified and certified for the role they're performing. But just getting people available who are backgrounded and experienced it's the best thing that we can do right now to fill this gap that we're going to be experiencing over the next several years.
Thank you very much, Sheriff. I have one question for you personally. So you kind of mentioned there that there are a number of initiatives being taken to recruit and retain talent in law enforcement. And in a sheriff's department like yours that does see continued demand based on population and other services needed, that lagging impact, though, of these other initiatives, do you feel like this, the implementation of House Bill 5203, that would actually provide that immediate impact that you're looking for in Kent County and maybe not necessarily speaking for other counties, but that it would be able to be realized quicker than these other initiatives?
Yes, I obviously, there are a number of things that we need to do, kind of the long game, as I would call it. You're going to work at young people coming into the industry, preparing them to come into the industry. But you can only do so much on that end because they're frankly just not old enough to take on these roles and to have acquired the emotional development that you need to be a poised police officer. So the gap that we're seeing is on the other end. It's the experienced officers that can be used to train, but also just hold the place until that next generation is moving up. The attrition that we originally saw in like 2020, 2021, that is starting to not be the case, where young people who've come into the industry are turning right around and leaving it. I'm not seeing that anymore in my department, but what I'm seeing are the results of many of the COPS programs in the 90s, where we hired many, many, many officers all at the same time with grant funds that are now retirement eligible. And financially, it doesn't make sense for them to stay another 2 years at the same rate of pay because their pensions outpace what their wages would. So it's not really going to be effective, at least in Kent County, to just ask that they stay longer because it's a financial decision for them. But asking them to come back and not having the restrictions of the 1,000 hours does make a big difference for our operation and the logistics that we're faced with here over the next several years.
Great. I do have a question from Representative Bazat. Do you still have your question? No question there. My question actually, too, is, you mentioned there young people coming into the industry, coming into the workforce, that you're not seeing that same, I guess, turnover rate that you had seen previously. Do you think that by having officers who have this, as you said, emotional intelligence and emotional aptitude after years in the force, that is also something that can be beneficial to maintaining a steady pipeline of good talent development within the sheriff's department as well?
It absolutely is. When you first get hired into this field and you're putting some very challenging, emotionally draining circumstances, to have an experienced officer walk beside you on that same call and kind of work with you on what options we have to work with, what are some of the strategies we can use to de-escalate, that is exponentially more effective than putting a handful of very young officers there who they're all experiencing this for the first time and really struggling for what their options are. So it's a very effective tool to help an officer develop, which then reduces the stress experienced by that officer. If they don't feel like they have the tools to resolve circumstances, they aren't going to be as satisfied in this job.
Great, thank you very much. I'm looking to my committee to see if we have any other lagging questions. Great. Thank you so much for your time today, Sheriff. I'd also like to thank Sheriff Saxton as well for your testimony and your service. Our communities and counties appreciate you. I think this was really great testimony, kind of enlightening about what is involved here and what this can do to, I think, impact all of our counties, and also give us some perspective on what sheriff's departments across the state are facing and opportunities for us to improve some of these circumstances. So I really appreciate the testimony today. I do have a couple of cards to read in. Not wishing to speak in support of the bill, Mike Spence from Southeast Michigan Council of Governments. Not wishing to speak in support of the bill, Samantha Gibson from the Michigan Association of Counties. With that, seeing no further questions and business before the committee will stand adjourned.